Hello, welcome to this guide to learning lessons from the Mock with True West, the 25 Mark Live Theatre. Firstly, let's have a look at the question. So, briefly explain the ways in which two or more performers use their performance skills to create convincing romantic or family relationships on stage at particular moments. Analyse and evaluate the contribution of your chosen performers to the TDE, the total dramatic effectiveness of the production. Now, let's have a little look at the advice from the examiner. So, one thing that they make really clear is that it's all about the focus on the demands of the question. So here it's about romantic or family relationships. They also talk about the idea of being in summary. So mid to low are spending too long in summary. So rather than explaining why they're chosen the particular production or its relevance to the question. So you need to be able to make that connection to brothers straight away, or the mothers and sons if it's the family relationships. Also, making a statement in the opening paragraph, so clearly indicating why you're choosing this production. The idea being is you might have seen a number of plays and you're choosing this one because it best connects to the question. Also, more effective answers, so getting towards that top end, give clear statements about the production team's intentions. All right, so you might want to think about things the actors wanted to do or the director wanted to do. And then specifically on this question, it references the way you need to talk about establishing relationships. So how those relationships start and how they progress. Also thinking about the interaction. It's not merely about the two actors saying this actor does this and this actor does that, but really getting to grips with how they interact with each other on stage at different moments. So writing about them together, not just writing about them separately. Okay, next there's a bit more detail here so you can see what to include. We've referenced this thing about the relationships, also particular moments, the total dramatic effectiveness. So how successful was it? How did it achieve the intentions that they set out to achieve? How did it make you think or feel? Then, of course, we've got types of relationships you could refer to. And key to this is the way they use their performance skills, the way that they used all of these different elements to communicate those relationships. Okay, next up, planning. How would you structure your answer in response to this question? And which scenes would you respond with? Think about the question first, and then come up with the best scenes that you could use. Now, if you could fill that in below. Okay, now, no doubt you've chosen some scenes, and it's important that you've chosen a scene that establishes, like they said earlier, probably the opening or a scene quite early into the piece. Then there's moments of relationship change. You can choose one that's suitable. An example would be where there's this kind of role reversal, where Lee becomes the writer and Austin becomes the stealer of toasters. That might be a good moment, but there's lots of other ones. There's moments where Saul might be in the scene. You might think, oh, that exposes an interesting dynamic between the two brothers. So the sense of competition. And then how the relationship has changed with the mother arriving. Now, this isn't a really detailed plan. This is just making sure that the response to the question is really linked to them being brothers. So your plan for a different question would be very different. And it's being flexible enough to respond to that. Next up, we've got an example. And this is an example introduction. And I want you to decide with the scale below how you would rate this introduction once I've read this through and you've had a chance to look at it. So True West is centred around the fraught relationship between two brothers, Austin, played by O'Hare, and Lee, Alex Ferns. The playwright Sam Shepard uses the brothers to explore the dual nature of man. The brothers become symbolic of the old mythologised West America and modern capitalist and suburban America through their relationship. The fragility of both is exposed through the piece. Philip Breen directed the version in Scotland originally in 2014 at the Citizens Theatre. Breen thought that this raw and emotional portrayal of brotherhood would resonate with Scottish audiences during the independence debate. The brothers' performance are highly emotive, which paired with the heightened dark comic style, acting as a symbol of tradition versus progress. If you could rate this now. Okay, so let's see how this compares to what you made of it. It's interesting. When I first read it, I was really taken by this introduction. I thought, oh, that's a really interesting angle. But when you look closely at the criteria, there's some things that are there and there's some things that are missing. So what is there? They definitely mentioned brothers. Yeah, brothers is at the centre of the answer. The dual nature of man. Okay, you've also got this playwright's intention there with the reference to Sam Shepard. It's better if you mention the production team's intentions because that's the one that you saw, and she does that here as well. So this idea of brotherhood resonating with independence. Now that's really sophisticated. It's a really nice angle on the piece, and it shows she understands it. You might have noticed as well that you refer to the Tri-School Theatre. That's also correct, but it did start at the Citizens, so you can mention that. She has mentioned the play, the theatre, the director of the year. You have to do that. Normally at the start, but it's fine there. What has she not done? Oh, actually, she's done one other thing. She's mentioned dark comedy style. It being heightened as well. So she's got an aspect of style. You notice some of it doesn't read that easily. Like the bit at the end about the symbol of tradition and progress. They can lack a bit of clarity. Trying to say too many things, I think. Also, there's not really this own response as an audience member. This kind of does it later in the other examples, but it's good to get it in there early on. Okay, now let's look at another one and we'll compare. And this is the second introduction. And have a look at this now and you'll be able to rate it afterwards. I saw the digital theatre production of True West, directed by Philip Bream at the Tri-School Theatre in 2014. I was enthralled by Bream's compelling retelling of Shepard's psychological exploration into the two alternate states of the human psyche. True West is an in-depth dissection into the violence, competition, and primal nature of brotherly relationships. The play was mainly carried by Eugene O'Hare, Austin, and Alex Ferns, Lee, as they illustrate the frustration, masculinity, and shifting power dynamics of brothers struggling to make it in 1980s American suburbia. I was deeply compelled by Bream's depiction of the fragility of the American dream, as O'Hare and Ferns chaotically demonstrated the cracked reality of both old Western values and the polarisation of the modern world. Combined with fraught family rivalry and complicated relationships, this production featured many examples of success in creating convincing family relationships. Take a moment to rate the example now. Okay, I think you'll agree that this is a better example than the one we heard earlier, although that was good. And this one is particularly good because of its clarity. It makes perfect sense. I mean, it's quite long. You wouldn't necessarily need all this at the start, but it does have that clarity. So what have we got going on here? We've got question focused, this fantastic competition and primal nature of brotherly relationships, straight away taking the question of family relationships head on. All of the standard stuff at the start is said really briefly. There's playwright's intentions. Now, yeah, wouldn't it be better if we had production team intentions? But there's nothing wrong with that here. It would certainly lift it if those production team's intentions are mentioned at the start of the next paragraph. There's this key thing about being an audience member. Okay, so I was deeply compelled. There's a nice evaluative line there. And also the analysis of the fragility of the American dream, the chaotic, desperate characters. The context stuff isn't thrown in for no reason. It's thrown in because it links with the brothers. So the old and the new. linking to the distinctive qualities of the brothers, and they've really answered the question at the end. Okay, so they've used the language of the question. Haven't mentioned style. That would lift it in terms of AO3, but it's very, very good to begin with. Now, there were some really good introductions in your ones. I just didn't want to show one of yours because I thought it would be better to see a different one. But there are some good ones in the ones that we've seen. So having looked at these introductions, let's now take a look at some of the common misconceptions. So these are things that feature in a lot of the essays that were written. So there's a lack of focus in the question, in the description, analysis and evaluation. So it means if you're going to talk about the brothers and the way that they speak to each other or interact with each other, you want to then analyse what it tells us about their brotherly relationship and evaluate how you felt or thought as an audience member watching it. So there's a real through line to it. It's not just the case of, oh, I'm going to talk about the brother relationship here, but then I'm not really going to analyse brothers. Okay, or I'm not really going to use any evaluative language to do that. Vividness of acting skills. So you're able to, as you'll see with the examples that we have here, give us a real sense of what they look like on screen. Sometimes there's minimal quotes. You've got loads of quotes in those quote packs. So you want to be learning those. Really good use of your time. Make a Quizlet of the key quotes and test yourself so that you know for your key examples. And then this is a small one because AO3 is only 5 marks, but referring to style and aims of the production team. Yeah, go back to those interviews for the production team aims. And, the style is there. We've learnt how to describe the style. It's a really easy thing to reference. So we've got 2 scene examples here, one from scene 8, Stolen Toasters, and one from the end. I didn't really want to go through a whole essay. I thought it might be a bit hard to handle, and also wanted to show you the best rather than showing you an essay that didn't necessarily stay consistent all the way through or was a bit hard to read all the way through. Okay, so let's see if we can get through this one, if we can read it. In addition, towards the end of the play, the performers push the narrative towards catastrophe as the roles become somewhat reversed. During the last scene, the actors are visibly dirtied and sweaty, reinforcing how all the place I can't read it in this moment. All-time place structure is lost, and the family relationships have been completely destroyed due to chaotic and money pressures. With the appearance of Mum on stage as beautifully portrayed, or played by, and the actor's name there, a bit scribbly. Her clear-cut appearance, well-spoken accent, highlights the brothers' primal, tame and savage states. This reaches boiling point when Austin, displaying an enormous change of character, lunges at Lee, strangles him with a telephone wire. O'Hare let out a high-pitched nasal explosive sounds, straddling and lassoing Lee's neck and body like he were a western horse. Then O'Hare took Lee down to the ground, completely suffocating him, whilst maintaining a grin. This chaotic and maliciously violent battle created a shocking and deeply disturbing effect on the audience. So we've got TDE there. How did the audience feel? Whilst this was sinister in nature, there was a sense of pride felt by the audience that Austin had proved himself and gained his status. So there's a sense of Austin's status changing there and the audience feeling pride, which is a nice point. I felt that the actors' performances brought out this opinion in the audience, highlighting the corruption of the human mind and the vulnerability of family relationships. So take a moment to rate the quality of description there. And now you want to rate the quality of evaluation. Okay, good. So you'll see here that there are some really nice moments with description. Okay, but if we think about the description starting about here. Okay, and by description I mean acting skills. Okay, so we've got acting. That's very important. There could be more a little bit earlier. Yes, there could be a little bit more. There isn't a quote there. There's this explosive sounds, but it's still, we can still sort of imagine quite well what's in front of us. Now, where we see this example really working is with the analysis and the evaluation. So there's a reference to the audience, so the pride that the audience feel, their opinion on the audience. There's always that reference back to the audience. So this is really, really strong. They're obviously drawing out in the analysis, there's a nice little link to the Western and the lasso and that sort of thing, but it's not overdone. And where this candidate did overdo that in other parts, they didn't score as well. So this is what we call a really nice balance. There's a good balance, as you can see. There's a lot of analysis here. They're answering the question here and here. There could just be a little bit more on the acting skills. Okay, scene example 2, and this one's a bit easier to read. I'll read this through and then you'll do the same thing in terms of scoring the description and the evaluation. In scene 8, O'Hare and Ferns are able to expose a shift in power between Austin and Lee. We see this on the line, "Do you want some toast?" Here Austin is attempting to stand up to his brother by speaking the same angry and violent language. O'Hare matches Fern's pitch in the first scene, shouting with a clear, defiant tone, placing equal emphasis on each word. This displays Austin's attempt at regaining authority. Paired with his tense, straight body language, we begin to see how unnatural this is for him. Yet on this line, O'Hare and Ferns are nose to nose, the closest they've been in the play, or the closet, as it says there, perhaps reflecting Shepard and Bream's idea that it is actually their animalistic traits that unite them. They are the two parts of one man. Their contrast in comfortability is shown through O'Hare's tense, upright but close body language in comparison to Ferd's wide gait, open stance, defiant glare. They stay like this for a few seconds, not saying anything. Then O'Hare begins to cry. I think it says guttily there, showing slowly curling inwards until he collapses on the floor as Lee stands. This moment is extremely emotive due to the use of pause and silence compared with O'Hare's crippling body language. Here both O'Hare and Ferns are able to successfully showcase the pain caused by violence involvement in family relationships, as well as suggest that we are innately connected to our family in our less admirable traits. Okay, having a look at that, think about the description. Now you've scored the description, if you want to now look at the evaluation. Good, and let's have a little look. So this one does have, it is better on the description than the last one. There is more going on here. We've got stuff on voice down here with the tone. Got to be careful, all the stuff on body language as well. Got to be careful a little bit about this comment on language. It sounds a little bit English literature when you're analysing the language. It's how they use the language as performers. And then if we look further at description, we've got these points here about body language. And there's a quote thrown in. Now, as you know from earlier, from what I said, there could be more quotes. One isn't really enough, but this is a lot better. The analysis and evaluation is very good, as you can see from the comments I've written around it. So there is this real sense of, I love this point about the animalistic traits uniting them. That's a really nice point, that they're like animals. The two parts of one man is another fantastic comment, particularly in terms of how the performances achieve that, not just that that's the intention of the playwright. And then we've got this really fascinating insight into brother relationships. So this is when I said, oh, you need to analyze the actual relationships. This is how to do it. So the violence in family relationships, the fact that we share our less admirable traits. This is someone with real insight into those relationships, telling us what it communicated for her as a performance piece. So really strong on that account. So having seen those examples, I want you to read through your own feedback and then rewrite the essay. Use the same question, consider all the examples we have here and the feedback that's been provided to you. Then if you need to rewatch the key scenes as you're typing, that's absolutely fine. We want to really get a sense of